So, like I said, the other day, I showed you an hour's worth of footage of how Palestinians are starving. They're having to make food out of animal feed and all these things. It's really horrific. You know, but since then, what's happened is that you've had a few, you know, packages that have been dropped by air of aid, right? Supposed aid. And what I find so incredible about this is that you have the Americans pretending that they give enough of a crap to provide Palestinians with aid while they're killing them. You know, it's like, I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna give you an aspirin, but then shoot you in the head. This is what the Americans are doing. They are the ones providing the bombs that are being dropped on Gaza, and then they send a bunch of crackers or flour, you know. And the worst part is that it doesn't even reach the Palestinians because they're getting massacred when they try to go get the aid. That's when the Israelis are driving in the trucks, but the Americans that are dropping it by air, or the Jordanians even. I'll show you the king. You know, he got off his ass for a second to go drop some aid. Look, I'll show you the video. It's ridiculous, really. It's honestly, it's ridiculous. And the worst part is that it doesn't even fall in. It doesn't even reach people in Gaza. It ends up falling in the sea. It's the aid that they're going through all this effort of delivering to Palestinians is falling into the sea. Here's the Jordanian king, King Abdullah II, who again I should remind you is a colonel in the British Army, you know, I have to say a few things. Okay, the fact that he's a colonel in the British Army, I mean, yeah, that doesn't, you know, it's not necessarily the hallmark of evil or something like that. No, but my point with why am I telling you this information is because if you look at Abdullah, you look at the Egyptian president Sisi. These are people that have been brought up and raised in the West. And when I say that, I don't mean that in the sense they were born there and they went to school there and then that's it. No, I mean that they've been groomed by the security state and the Zionists so that they go back to their countries and then they govern their countries in a way that suits the Israelis. They've been groomed by Zionists. Do you understand the meaning here? Their political ambitions extend as far as Israel will allow them to, right? This is what you have to understand. So you know, it's not just that he is. I mean, you know, my question is, where was he 4 months ago? Where was he a year ago? Okay, it's, you know, if I were him, great. I'd also suit up in a uniform and get in the plane and drop the aid myself. Wonderful. But where were you 4 months ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago? What were you doing? What were you waiting for? So what's happening right now? You have to understand this is a PR stunt. What's happening is that the Israelis, they're feeling the heat from all of this backlash against them internationally. Although, again, they have no shame, so are they really? But nevertheless, the Americans, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Israelis have put together a short PR stunt where each one has brought in a little bit of aid, right? Look at what I'm explaining to you. Look at the timeline. In the last week, we had this airdrop here. And again, this was not just from Egypt. It was also from UAE and France, I think. Yeah. And then you had the Israelis bringing in the aid, which turned into the flower massacre because Zionists are unhinged and they just like to shoot Palestinians. And then you have the Americans also dropping a few, you know, conducting a few airdrops. Why all of this at the same time? Why, for example, were the Jordanians not doing airdrops 2 months ago or the Americans doing 2 months ago? This is a concerted, coordinated effort. And it's being done to kind of, you know, take the spotlight off of the crimes that they're committing and make it look like, oh, look, we're so generous. We're offering the people that we're butchering aid, you know? Oh, your leg got blown off. Here's a cracker. You want some chocolate? Oh, you're going to die in a day. I mean, and the worst part, it's so cheap. It's such a cheap, pathetic stunt because the aid is not even reaching Gazans. Number one, because the Israelis massacre them, or two, the packages fall in the sea. But also, look at this, honestly. I have to show you the video because you're not going to believe me. Just look at it falling into the sea, please. Look at that. You might be thinking, oh, well, you know, what's the big deal? They should just go and get it. I mean, are you serious? Do you know how fucking heavy that thing is? If you held onto it, it would literally drown you because of how heavy it is. Not only that, that's the least of your worries. The Israelis won't even allow Palestinians to go into the sea, right? It was already like this before October 6th, before October 7th on the 6th, because of the siege since 2007. So, you know, if you're a fisherman in Gaza, good luck trying to fish. You know, the waters, you've got such a small confined space. It's been overfished. There's no fish left anymore today. And not only that, but, you know, the Israelis can pick you off even if you're on the beach, like the boys I was talking about earlier, which was a huge, huge story at the time, you know. I mean, look, I haven't forgotten about it. Many people haven't. So, you know, the idea that, oh, you can go out and get it. A, it's heavy. Two, the Israelis might kill you. So, no, this is embarrassing, especially that it's not just some random person who dropped the damn thing. This is supposed to be a professional army. They know how to deliver weapons to Israel, but they can't drop a bunch of fucking cornflakes. It's humiliating. Also, it's humiliating that Palestinians have to go out and swim after it, like you know, it's so. I mean, for me, I don't view the Palestinians as being or having been humiliated. Not at all. But what they are doing, their behavior, it is intended to be humiliating. And ironically, who ends up really being humiliated by this? It's the countries dropping the aid and committing the massacre at the same time. It's so bad. I want to show you a tweet. You're going to laugh at this because it's really funny. This is, I wasn't expecting this. This is Ford. Do you guys remember the former U.S. ambassador to Syria? The one who, you know, who helped with the coup or the attempted coup against Bashar al-Assad? Yeah, this guy. Look what he had to say on Twitter about this. He said, I've seen Israel humiliate previous U.S. administrations. But aside from the murderous 1967 Israeli airstrike against the U.S. Navy ship Liberty, thank you, now forcing the United States to do airdrops of aid to Gaza as if the U.S. is no better than Egypt and Jordan is Israel's worst humiliation of the United States I've ever seen. Yes, you're absolutely correct. I mean, the fact you're committing genocide is perhaps the more egregious and flagrant transgression at hand, but nevertheless, I'll give you you know, a thumbs up at you know, for this observation. Yeah, it's humiliating because who do you think is making these? It's the Israelis that won't let the Americans do that. You might be thinking, well, how is that possible? It's the United States that gives aid to Israel. And no, you got everything's backward, man. If you think that the U.S. is running the show here 100%, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course, the U.S. is running it to some extent, but listen, the Israelis put themselves first. What did he just talk about? What did I just talk about? What have I talked about to you a million times? The Israelis bombed a U.S. Navy ship on purpose. When push comes to shove, the Israelis will absolutely shove Americans into harm's way. This is what people don't understand. There's no allies with the Israelis. Just like, you know, you when you dance with the devil, he's the one picking the tune. That's how it is. So you've got all these aid trucks. All these aid trucks. It's not just aid. It's just basic necessities that have to come into Gaza either way. That have been stuck at the border for months now. And remember, every single day, you need to usually get 500 trucks into Gaza every day. And that's before October 7th. And I mean, when we say before October 7th, again, it's not like it was that much better. It's still a siege. That's the whole problem, is that you're dependent on external aid. That's how the Israelis want Gaza to be. They want it to be under control so they can cut off the aid, as they have done right before our very eyes at a moment's notice, on a whim. So 500 trucks, and you know, at best you maybe had 18 trucks coming in. The Israelis will claim it was 30. This is during the Flower massacre just 2 days ago. I mean, I'm sorry, this is not a way to live. You cannot live at the mercy of a bunch of psychotic Zionists. I'm not having it. Whether they're American or they're Saudi or they're Israeli, I really don't care. You cannot be living, you cannot, you know, conduct business and your affairs and live, simply live as a human being with, you know, your life in their hands. This is ridiculous. I mean, just as a matter of sovereignty, never mind the fact that we're talking about Zionists who are psychotic, just as a matter of sovereignty, how can you accept that you are dependent on the, you know, the whims of a foreign entity? This is outrageous. Look at this. Remember, you've got how many people in Gaza? About 2.3 million. Half of them are children, and they're starving. They've been starving since the beginning, right? 3 planes dropped 66 bundles containing 38,000 meals into Gaza. Now, you do the math. Once again, I put this to you. One of you can do it in the comments. What percentage of that is, you know, of that Gazan population is going to eat? If you've got 2.3 million people and 38,000 meals that have been dropped in, and that's just once. That's if you just give every person within the capacity one meal. It's gone in you know, the blink of an eye. What about in 2 hours? What about the rest of the people that didn't eat? This is a joke. This is a fucking insult. Here, let me play this clip from Glenn Greenwald, which is very good.
Here is an Irish nurse, I believe she's Irish, who works with one of these aid organizations. And I just want you to listen to what she said, having been to Gaza, having all kinds of colleagues in Gaza that she's worked with, a long time, healthcare workers and others, about the situation in Gaza. Here's what she has to say.
Just explain first to our viewers why aid isn't being allowed in. Where is the aid?
It's very simple. It's because the Israeli military won't let it in. We could end this starvation tomorrow very simply if they would just let us have access to people there, but it's not being allowed. This is what they said on the 7th of October. Nothing will go in, and so it remains the case. And for people in the north of Gaza, it's even worse because no food is reaching them anymore. And so my own staff, my own colleague Abir, has been eating animal feed, and horrifyingly, the food that they were eating, which is food for horse and donkeys, is now running out, and now they're eating birdseed. The statistics also tell their own story. 1 in 6 children under the age of 2 in the north of Gaza are now acutely malnourished. This is the fastest decline in a population's nutrition status ever recorded, and what that means is that children are being starved at the fastest rate the world has ever seen. And we could finish it tomorrow. We could save them all, but we're not being able to.
I mean, I presume you heard in process what she said. She said that children are being starved at the fastest rate we have ever seen. And unless you want to just dismiss every single healthcare worker, every dedicated aid organization as somehow propagandistic against Israel, all willing to lie collectively for some reason, I know it's kind of a human impulse to believe that human suffering and humanitarian catastrophe on this scale probably isn't happening. It's a comforting belief to convince ourselves or lure ourselves into accepting. The evidence is just overwhelming. It's overwhelming. If you just listen to any of the people who have been to Gaza, who have colleagues there, everything they're describing is very uniform. The data proves it. Neutral aid organizations are all saying the same thing, that this is a catastrophe on a scale unlike anything they've ever seen.
It's really scandalous. Honestly, it's scandalous beyond belief. I mean, she said that children are starving at an unprecedented rate, right? Those are the words she said. Children are being starved at the fastest rate the world has ever seen. I mean, how do you wrap your brain around that? How do you wrap your mind around that? It's impossible. I still don't even grasp fully what she's saying because it's so huge. It's so big. But it's real. I mean, we see it, and I don't need statistics. You know, I'll just remind you. Even if this were not the case, let us argue hypothetically that it's only a quarter of the people. Are you okay with starving 250,000 people? Like what? You know what? This is not an issue of numbers or percentages. It's the principle, and on top of everything, to make things worse, it's absolute. It's everyone in Gaza. It's every single person who is subjected to the same fate. Do you understand how bad this is? You know, It's truly incredible. It's truly, truly horrific. And this is exactly what I wanted to basically say, is that, you know, on Thursdays, the Americans are delivering bombs and you know, to Gaza, and then on Fridays, they're delivering candy. You know, it's funny because this is not just in Gaza. When I think of how they would do this winning hearts and minds thing in Vietnam and Afghanistan, you know, it's like throwing candy at people, like they're a bunch of, you know, like you're throwing bird seed at a bunch of chickens. I mean, it's just it's degrading. It's really degrading. The problem is that you know that when people are starving, you just want a meal, man. You don't care who gave you the meal or how it came. But again, we're not even talking about everyone being fed. They're not being fed. It's not enough. You know, if there was enough aid coming in, this would be half a problem. It wouldn't excuse the genocide in any capacity, obviously. But you know, you have to remember that even people who are not starving to death, but who are, for example, malnourished, it's much harder to, if your leg you know, got amputated, or you're fighting an infection, if you have cholera, you can't fight off the infection. You can't fight off a fever when you're malnourished, right? Or fight off any other array of diseases when you're malnourished and you're not, you know, there's no clean water. So even before October 7th, I think it's 93%. It was not certainly over 90%. Over 90% of the water in Gaza was undrinkable before October 7th. So you see how the Israelis, you know, they steal all these resources from Palestine, and then they like throw crumbs back at the Palestinians, which is a hallmark feature of colonialism. It's just like, you know, if you're looking at the British in Iran or Persia, you know, like stealing all of this oil and then giving a little bit back, and then of course making the Iranians pay taxes on their own oil, or the same thing in India, you know, building railways and then making the Indians pay for the railways themselves. Except that, you know, we're talking about you know, 75 years of this. And it's documented today better than ever because of the advent of technology. It's genocide on an unforeseen scale. It's really something devilish. Like if you were to attribute this word to anything in the world right now, devilish or evil, you know, unequivocally, it would be this. There is simply nothing else that fits this description, you know, more adequately. There just isn't. So, you know, again, I know the Israelis want to project an image of being, you know, like somehow civilized or something, but their behavior indicates otherwise. And I want to show you some of the photos. Again, this is very, very distressing. But, you know, people are starving. Look. You know, I told you this last time. I told you this last time, and I'm going to say it again because of how horrific these images are. And again, it warrants repeating. When I first saw the images, the first thing I thought of is that image from the Armenian genocide. There's that boy who has been starved to a skeleton by the Turks, by the Ottomans, and he's like, you know, the sun is in his eyes or something, and he can't really he's frowning a bit, but you know, this is what it reminds me of, right? Really just horrific stuff. I don't know if I can pull up the photo up right now, but ironically, the Israelis who constantly bring up the Holocaust in a very dishonest manner, so that they can, here's the image. Again, this is from the Armenian genocide. I'll come back to the Holocaust in a second, but this is, when I saw this person in Gaza, this is what they reminded me of on the left, from the Armenian genocide at the hands of the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, and their ally Germany in 1915. 1.5 million Armenians killed. So, you know, that's what it reminded me of. And you know, the Israelis constantly bring up the Holocaust, and if you go and you watch what the Russians filmed when they liberated the concentration camps, you'll find very, very similar images. And I just don't understand how the Israelis who constantly say they're traumatized by the Holocaust and that they are the Jewish state and therefore they get to monopolize the Holocaust, why they would go and inflict a very similar fate on anyone else for any reason. I shouldn't have to remind you, under the Genocide Convention, there is no excuse for genocide. Even if someone commits genocide against you, hypothetically, you can't go and commit genocide against them. It's just absolutely, completely forbidden. It's an absolute, a legal absolute. So, it just goes to show you once again how hypocritical and dishonest the Israelis are, the Zionists, because they don't give a crap about the Holocaust. That's just political milk for them to use, to shut people up. Like, oh, how dare you accuse us of genocide? We suffered a genocide. I'm sorry, mate. The fucking photos say otherwise. The videos that keep coming out every day say otherwise. And need I remind you, there are many Holocaust survivors who are they're losing their goddamn minds at what's happening in Gaza. They want nothing to do with Israel, And this is even before this current episode. They hate Israel, because it does everything that the Nazis did and worse by these metrics now. I mean, like literally quantifiably worse. It's not an opinion. You can literally measure it as a science and show that this is the case. It's shocking. And whatever we know, whatever we have as figures and statistics, by the time it's already been written down and recorded and put together, it's already worse on the ground. In reality, it's already worse. And there was someone from the UN who was saying that earlier. I don't know if I'll be able to pull up their speech quickly, but that was basically their point, In any case, it was from I think it was from OCHA. I don't remember, but that's the exact point he made. Is that by the time we have the statistics that the UN or any NGO has the statistic, it's already worse on the ground, and what we're seeing now is already horrific. And what's crazy is that everything I've been talking about to you in the last 20 minutes is just about starvation. Like, forget the bombs, which are already their own dimension of the war, their own beast. This is really something else, So the genocide is compounded by other factors. If you consider the lack of medicine, this is another one. The lack of water, this is another one. Lack of refuge, all of these things, it's like several genocides on top of each other, because to be hungry is already bad enough. You can commit a genocide just by starving people, and that's happening. You can also commit a genocide just by bombing people. That's also happening. You can commit genocide by denying people life-saving medication. It's also happening. It's so sick. There's no recovering from this for Israel, and nor should there be. Over my dead fucking body, over my dead body. There's no coming back from this for Israel. There shouldn't have any coming back since the Nakba. But we're around, we're alive right now to see this and talk about it and witness it and bear witness to these horrific things as they're happening. So, we bear an even greater responsibility because we weren't alive back then. We are alive now. And there's no coming back from this. I don't care if they have to run off and live on the moon. I don't give a shit. There can be no rehabilitation of Israel ever, if there even was one to begin with. And I'll put this to you: the Israelis, the Zionists, and their friends in the West were trying to say that, well, Bashar al-Assad, he shouldn't be rehabilitated. Why are they allowing Syria back into the Arab community, into the Arab League? I'm sorry. What does Bashar al-Assad even compare when it comes to this? I mean, anything that he has supposedly done, and we know that they lied a lot about Syria, is completely, utterly, and unequivocally dwarfed by the Israelis' behavior. It does not even come close. And this is just counting from the last 4 months. If we counted the last 75 years, we come to the same fucking conclusion. So, they wanted to basically turn Syria into a pariah, Iran into a pariah. They wanted Venezuela and Korea and Nicaragua and Cuba to become pariah states. Jesus Christ. I mean, what have these countries done that even bears any resemblance to this? Nothing, literally nothing. It just doesn't exist. And if you're going to call them pariahs, what the fuck does that make Israel then? No, I'm sorry. Zionism is a curse. It's a cancer. You have to understand this. There's a reason Britain and France came and cut up Syria into little pieces, and then they stuck Israel in the middle. It's not some like random coincidence. You know, they did it on purpose because of its strategic location, because Palestine is connects Africa to Asia, and then those two to Europe as well. It's a crossroads, right? It's geostrategic. It's not only geostrategic, but the historical importance of the region, the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, the advent of Islam, Christianity, Judaism. Every metric, every domain and field that you could possibly think of. I mean, it's the crown jewel of the world, right? It's always been the center of politics, Syria. So they carved it up, and then they said, oh, well, this is Lebanon. That's going to be Jordan. This is Iraq. Here's a piece to Turkey. Here's Palestine. Oh, and guess what? We're going to stick Israel here. And Israel is an anomaly. It has nothing to do with the rest of the countries here. You know, and it's not like they're Arab Jews. If the Arab Jews are already living there, there's no problem. They're literally already there, right? So who are these Israelis? They're Europeans. They came and brought these Europeans here, stuck them there on purpose, so it's an outpost. And you know, it has to be dismantled. I'm sorry, man. This behavior, any country that behaves like this would have been bombed into oblivion by now by the West. They would have found every excuse in the world to go and do it, and they have done this over far less in the past. They've done it to Iraq, they've done it to Syria, to Libya, to Somalia, to Sudan. You know, you name it, they've done it. To Vietnam, they always find an excuse. We have to contain communism, Al Qaeda, you know, just whatever they want. And they claim there's such a threat, there's such a huge threat that this crusade has to be undertaken. I'm sorry, you know, if you're ever going to argue in favor of you know, intervention, they love using this word intervention when it's actually imperialism. But if you're ever going to argue for the dismantling of a country the way Nazi Germany was dismantled, then Israel fits the bill without question. Without question, there is no question about this. And I should remind you that in 1945, the biggest security threat in Britain after the Nazis had already been defeated were the fucking Israelis. The fucking Israelis, because they were putting bombs inside of London. They were putting bombs all over the place, government buildings. They were mailing letter bombs. They invented the shoe bomb. They were trying to kill as many British politicians and citizens and officials as they could. Can you imagine? If you can go online and read the files from MI5, the internal security files, and you can see for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Go and look at that. So from the very beginning, they have been nothing but a menace. They should be given no quarter whatsoever. Zionism is a fucking cancer that was planted by the West in the Middle East. It is a disease. It is something completely unnecessary. Judaism has existed for thousands of years without Zionism. So there's no reason for these two things to be mixed together whatsoever. Jewish schools, Jewish people, Jewish culture have existed all over the world and have existed in the Middle East with Arabs, with Muslims, with Christians, without any issue. It's only the Europeans that come in and start creating, well, you know, we're going to make crusaders out of the Christians, and we'll make Zionists out of the Jews, and we'll make ISIS and Al Qaeda out of the Muslims and use them to, you know, for political gains. This is imperialism. It's European bullshit. It has no reason for being, okay? Judaism and Zionism do not have to be mixed into one. Judaism can exist peacefully and properly, and has done for eons without Zionism. So there's absolutely no argument for Zionism to exist unless you're a psychotic, deranged, genocidal maniac who thinks it's okay to, you know, wipe out 30,000 people in 4 months and then just keep going for 75 years. Sorry, no, we're not having it. We're not having it.